Our next speaker is Caleb Michael Kingwood. His speech is Creation versus Evolution, and his source is science textbooks. Please help me welcome Caleb.
All right. Every day it feels like we have evolution thrown at us from every angle. It is in our television programming, current literature, politics, and school. Evolution has even wormed its way into homeschool curriculum. Evolution versus creation theories have been debated since Darwin himself presented his theory. There are various ways that Christians can counter this attack on our beliefs. I would like to offer a simple, logical, and even scientific argument to the evolution theory. What could be more fundamental to our basic existence than the sun? Let's look at the sun from a scientific standpoint. Does the size of the sun change over the years? Recently, John A. Eddy, a Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics and High Altitude Observatory in Boulder, and Aaron A. Bornazan, a mathematician with S. Ross and Company in Boston, have found evidence that the sun has been shrinking at about 0.1% per century. Evidence that corresponds to a shrinkage rate of about 5 feet per hour. The diameter of the sun is close to 1 million miles, so that this shrinkage of the sun can go unnoticed for over hundreds or even thousands of years. There is no cause for alarm for us or any of our descendants for centuries to come, because the sun shrinks so slowly. Yet the sun does actually appear to shrink. The data Eddy and Bornazan examined spanned over a 400-year period of solar observation, so that this shrinkage of the sun, though small, is documented. What does the shrinkage of the sun have to do with creation versus evolution? The sun was larger in the past than it is now by 0.1% per century. For a creationist who believed that the world was created approximately 6,000 years ago, would have very little to worry about. The sun would have only been 6% larger than it is now. However, if the change of the solar radius remained constant, 100,000 years ago, the sun would be twice the size it is now. One could hardly imagine that any life could exist under such altered conditions. Yet 100,000 years ago is a small amount of time when dealing with evolutionary timescales. How far back in the past must one go to have a sun so large that it would touch the surface of the Earth? Well, the sun's radius changes at about 2.5 feet per hour. The distance between the sun and the Earth is 93 million miles, and there are 5,280 feet per mile. Assuming that the rate of shrinkage has not changed with time, then the surface of the sun which touched the Earth at a time in the past equal to this equation, which reads the 93 million miles times 5,280 feet per mile divided by 2.5 feet per hour times 24 hours per day times 365 days per year. The next line, when you multiply it, is 491,440,000,000 feet divided by 21,900 feet per year. When you divide that equals to 22,421,917.81 years. Approximately 20 million years ago. So at about 20 million BC, the sun would have touched the Earth. However, the time scales required for evolution range from about 500 million years to 2,000 million years. It is hard to fathom that all their evolutionary development, except for the last 20 million years, was taking place on a planet inside the sun. Think about it. One must remember that 20 million that 20 million year BC date is the extreme limit on the time scale for the Earth's existence. At the time at which the sun first emerged from the shrinking sun is 20 million BC. The shrinkage of the sun greatly alters what we believe the energy source within the sun, that is, thermonuclear fusion. The sun shrinks actually because of its own self-gravitational attraction. As it compresses itself, it heats itself, and that heat is expelled in the form of solar radiation, or sunlight. Scientists have not always attributed the energy source of the sun to thermonuclear fusion. Prior to the discovery of thermonuclear fusion, Helmholtz, a scientist, predicted that the energy of the sun was supplied by the gravitational collapse of the sun. This model was accepted until the theory of evolution began to dominate the scientific scene. Then Helmholtz's explanation was discarded because it did not provide the vast time span required by evolution. The substitute theory produced by Babe in the 1930s, precisely because thermonuclear fusion was the only known energy source that would last over the vast times required by evolution. Science may now be on the verge of disputing that substitute theory of the evolutionary model. The change in the size of the sun over the past 400 years is important to the study of origins. Over 100,000 years, these changes would have accumulated so that the life of any kind on the Earth would be very difficult, if not impossible. Thus, all the life on the Earth must be less than 100,000 years old. The sun, 20 million years ago, would have been so large that it would have engulfed the Earth. The sun cannot be more than 20 million years old. Those dates as upper limits rule out any possibility of evolution requiring hundreds of millions of years. However, the tiny change that would have occurred in the sun during the biblical times since creation would be so small as to go unnoticed. Thus, the changes in the sun are consistent with recent creation. You can spend a lot of time investigating other avenues to dismiss evolutionary theories of the Earth being millions of years old, or take my advice and focus on this one scientifically documented aspect of the shrinking sun. The changes detected in the sun call into question the accepted thermonuclear fusion energy source for the sun, thus in turn questions the entire theoretical structure upon which evolutionary theory of astrophysics is built.